So now we are able to write, very, scholarly studies of stuff in the history of science or in the history. You bring in different pedagogical techniques in indigenous history. You consult actual elders, whatever field you're talking about. But there is still that history that existed. Something actually did happen. It's a matter of fact what happened.
Herodotus was an ancient Greek historian who was born in the Persian Empire. He's known for having written the book The Histories, a detailed record of his inquiry on the origins of the Greco-Persian Wars. He is widely considered to have been the first writer to have treated historical subjects using a method of systematic investigation, specifically by collecting his materials and then critically arranging them into a narrative. On account of this, he is often referred to as the Father of History, a title conferred on him by the 1st century BC Roman orator Cicero. Ah, destiny and rem, history as gateway to objective truth. The facts of history, as it were. The first treatise was not the coalescing upon facts, but the description of a dispute from one side of the conflict. The Histories of Herodotus is considered the founding work of history in Western literature. Written in 430 BC in the Ionic dialect of Classical Greek, the history serves as a record of the ancient traditions, politics, geography, and clashes of various cultures that were known in Greece, Western Asia, and Northern Africa at the time. What are these facts of history? Even Wikipedia is aware enough to note not a fully impartial record. Moreover, the histories established the genre and study of history in the Western world, despite the existence of historical records and chronicles beforehand, by employing the narrative of history for a utility within the empire. Do not separate art and artist. Never forget that when Hegel came to the ultimate end of his system of dialectic, according to him, the final development of the man-god, the final breakthrough into totality and infinity was at hand. The most highly developed state in the history of the world was now in place, the existing Prussian monarchy under King Friedrich Wilhelm III, the hand which fed him. History, stories, all are utility, only insofar as they achieve biological aims. Who cares of their truth value? Facts, stories, serve a purpose to the people who tell them and the people who receive them. This purpose is strictly biological. Life wants for resource acquisition and sexual competition, and only survives in an environment if it is amenable to the way of life there. There are no facts of history. For instance, which historical narrative of America is most true? The 1619 Project view that America is endemically racist and founded on inherently immoral grounds in treating a group of peoples as subhuman? Or is America the land of opportunity, the promissory note of Dr. King, and that the doctrine of freedom was in fact stronger than even the act of slavery, which is why America's roots are inherently wholesome and nourishing, or some other variation or shade thereof? You could imagine takes in the facts of the history of America being like shades and gradations of colors, more charitable here, less damning there. Just tell them the facts of history. Is it a matter of fact what happened? Tell the factually true American narrative.
The world does not actually change. The past does not change depending on who's in power.
The past does not change depending on who is in power. So what is the difference then between Trump and Biden? Who cares? They will both tell the same history of America going forward again, right? Both visions, both truths, both facts, completely commensurate with one another, right? Make America great again, as in the past ways offer moral guidance, or America as racist cesspool, as in the past ways offer moral revulsion.
Yeah, this is very, very strange. Like the idea that, and I think there are some like obscure forms of, I don't know, metaphysics or whatever, like when you close the door of a human, if a sentient creature is perceiving something, it ceases to exist or something like that. But I think ordinarily that seems to be a pretty silly position.
You're describing a kind of mistaken metaphysics, quantum mechanics. My father was very into this kind of thing. Essentially, those who are interested in this don't realize that physics, like propositional sentences all the same, are constructed from language forms, insofar that they are self-referential and relative, and thus, just as you can make paradoxical statements from language, like you can draw nonsense pictures, quantum mechanics, the cat is alive and dead. Your particles can walk through walls, and other nonsense like this is merely a misunderstanding of the shadows of language's relativity, and that it draws us not truths, but plays games, And cannot pictures and games deceive?
I mean, like, even I'm slightly sympathetic. Well, I'm like sympathetic, towards the idea that language structures our world. But I would never for a second suggest that the actual external world as it really exists is something that just, especially dependent on something, honestly, as arbitrary as power.
Language does structure the world, and its utility is to those in the environment which surrounds them. This is why Inuits have more words for snow. There is a pragmatic and practical use to communicating, say, the difference between icy snow, packed snow, fluffy snow, hard snow, soft snow, if you must engage with it every day. But if you are in a desert environment, you might not have a single word for a phenomena which you have never seen. Does snow not exist to people who don't have a word for it because they have never seen it and never experienced it in their environment? Do Inuits experience more snow because they have more words for it? Is it not a kind of power to be able to describe snow in the environment of the Inuit, a kind of power in not being able to have to in the blazing desert? How is language, which you freely admit structures the world, not a part of the power of the natural biosphere?
But I mean, it's worse with Vaush, I think, because, I mean, I think he's also just a bad person. And I wanted to bring this up on stream.
A bad person. Let's go over the history and etymology of the word bad. Bad has humorous origins in that it is a funny, coupled, dual opposite to the binary good, which has another opposite in evil. How can a word, a concept, a binary, have two opposites? What is the difference? Is there one? Uh-oh, we should be very suspicious. Here I will reveal the unintended humor in your statement that Vaush is a, quote, bad person. Imagine, if you will, evil French toast. Now, bad French toast. Now, evil French toast again. What is the difference between evil and bad French toast? Well, from the etymology page for bad, quote, the expression bad is rare before 1400, and evil was more common until approximately 1700 as the ordinary antithesis of good. Why? Our conception of center for reality changed after the Protestant Reformation, which shook 16th century Europe and divides bad and evil, being good's opposite. Evil is a part of an object. It comes from God in this sense. The object is imbued with evilness. It is a part of its essence, as it were. Whereas bad is one's opinion. Who knows? Maybe you would say good French toast. I would say bad. We know what we mean. One person likes, the other doesn't. But evil here, in this sense, becomes imbued as a property of the toast. The difference between bad and evil being the metaphysical center for moral truth, the moral compass. In the case of evil, it being a third party, that of God. In the case of bad, it being in the first person, my understanding of badness. This evolution in language reflects the deep schism racked upon Europe, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, a difference in perspective. So, to say Vaush is a bad person is merely to say you don't like him, whereas to say he is evil is to imply that it is imbued inside his being, in a part of his objective self, as it were, and this demonstrates the nature of the evolving use of language over time. We used to refer to a third-party center for our moral claims, God, and thus evil. Now we refer to ourselves as center for our moral claims, and thus bad. We truly have killed God, and his blood is on our language.
I mean, I try to give him the benefit of the doubt, and in my mind, I'm like, because I'm also socialist, right? So, praxis. Everyone's like, praxis. We just have
Praxis is on Twitter, my dude.
Yeah, exactly. We just have to embrace it. People have different methods for bringing people over to the left. Maybe he's converting people on the right, but continually he makes the left look bad by engaging in poor decisions and then fucking having these absolutely garbage tier philosophical. And he's never read anything on it. And that's probably the thing that annoys me the most is the fact that he has the time now to sit, engage with these questions that he's dealing with. Pick up an intro to philosophy. He has the time to do that. He has the time and the money to be able to do that right now. But I don't know if he's just too lazy.
The time and the money to be able to do that. If somebody doesn't think like I do, it must be because they are poor or lazy. That is it.
But he's shown no effort to actually engaging with the material.
No effort? The material? What is the material, Rem? Please share with us your hall of mirrors, the books which you like, which you think bear the truth, but are only a Rorschach test of your being, an inkblot of yourself.
And that always bothers me. I mean, you have people come on. I criticize you for this as well. I mean, at least you read Bertrand Russell, right?
Yeah.
So at least you did something.
His teacher, Bertrand, described Wittgenstein as perhaps the most perfect example I have ever known of genius as traditionally conceived. Passionate, profound, intense, dominating. Also, 3 years later, in 1916, Russell reflected on his experience in a letter. Do you remember that I wrote a lot of stuff about theory of knowledge, which Wittgenstein criticized with the greatest severity? His criticism, though I don't think you realized it at the time, was an event of first-rate importance in my life and affected everything I have done since. I saw he was right, and I saw that I could not hope ever again to do fundamental work in philosophy. My impulse was shattered, like a wave dashed to pieces against a breakwater. Russell abandoned theory of knowledge, and only portions of it were published in journals during his lifetime. God has arrived. I met him on the 5:15 train. John Maynard Keynes was referring to the one and only Wittgenstein, the then 40-year-old macabre genius who was returning to his academic home at the Cambridge University after a 16-year absence. He was no god, he was just a man. Ethics and aesthetics are one. It is true. To Destiny, Rem, and Vaush, lovingly yours, Wax Costanza.
People always fixate on my obsession with like consistency, but like I find that kind of strange because you don't have like any consistent way of talking about something. You basically have nothing. So you necessarily become absurd, in my opinion.